Once upon a time in a small, bustling town, lived a woman named Rebecca. She was in her early 30s, confident, and possessed an unshakable determination. Rebecca had always been passionate about her career, and she had worked diligently to climb the corporate ladder. She was now on the verge of achieving her dream job as the manager of a prominent advertising agency. However, her journey to success had not been without its share of challenges. Rebecca's belief in gender equality was unwavering, and she was a firm advocate for women's rights in the workplace. She believed that women should be given equal opportunities and respect in their professional lives, regardless of their gender. Her career had been a testament to her hard work, but there were moments when she had to confront bias and stereotypes. One sunny morning, as Rebecca was getting ready for another day at the office, she received an email from her supervisor, Mr. Wilson. The subject line read, "Important meeting today." Curious, she opened the email, which read, "Rebecca, please be prepared for a meeting with our client, Mr. Thomas, this afternoon. He's known to have strong opinions, so make sure to be at your best." Rebecca felt a sense of excitement mixed with a hint of apprehension. Meeting with important clients was part of her job, but this one seemed different. She wondered why Mr. Wilson had sent her this email specifically, as client meetings were typically a team effort. As the clock neared the scheduled meeting time, Rebecca made her way to the conference room. She was greeted by her team, who had prepared a detailed presentation for the client. Mr. Thomas was a well-known figure in the business world, and his company was one of the agency's most significant clients. As Mr. Thomas entered the room, all eyes turned towards him. He was a tall, imposing figure in his late 40s, exuding an air of authority. He nodded curtly to the team and settled into his seat at the head of the table. Rebecca began the presentation, outlining the agency's creative concepts and strategies for Mr. Thomas's upcoming advertising campaign. She spoke with confidence, backed by her team's impressive work. However, as she continued, she noticed that Mr. Thomas's expression remained stern, and he frequently interrupted her with pointed questions and comments. Throughout the meeting, Rebecca maintained her professionalism, answering Mr. Thomas's queries and addressing his concerns to the best of her ability. However, as the meeting progressed, it became increasingly clear that Mr. Thomas was not satisfied with her responses. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Rebecca, I appreciate your effort, but I think it's essential to have a more experienced person handle my account. Someone who understands the nuances of my industry better." Rebecca was taken aback but remained composed. "Mr. Thomas, I assure you that our team is highly experienced and dedicated to delivering the best results. We have successfully managed numerous campaigns in your industry." Mr. Thomas raised an eyebrow and said, "Rebecca, let's not waste any more time. I think it's best if I work directly with a senior executive. It's nothing personal, it's just business." The meeting ended, and Mr. Thomas left the room, leaving Rebecca and her team in a state of confusion and frustration. Rebecca knew that her capabilities and experience were more than sufficient to handle the account, but she couldn't help but wonder if her gender had played a role in Mr. Thomas's decision. That evening, Rebecca couldn't shake off the feeling of disappointment. She decided to have a candid conversation with Mr. Wilson, her supervisor, about the meeting and her concerns. The next morning, she scheduled a meeting with Mr. Wilson in his office. She entered with a sense of determination and said, "Mr. Wilson, I wanted to discuss yesterday's meeting with Mr. Thomas. Mr. Wilson, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, nodded and gestured for Rebecca to sit. "Of course, Rebecca. What's on your mind?" Rebecca explained the details of the meeting and her belief that her gender might have influenced Mr. Thomas's decision. She added, "I've worked hard to reach this point in my career, and I believe I'm more than qualified to manage the account. I don't want to be judged based on my gender but on my abilities." Mr. Wilson leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Rebecca, I understand your concerns, but you have to remember that Mr. Thomas is one of our most significant clients. We need to maintain a good working relationship with him. It's not about your abilities, it's about what he feels comfortable with." Rebecca's disappointment deepened. She had expected her supervisor to support her and challenge such bias. She replied, "Mr. Wilson, I appreciate the importance of our client relationships. But I also believe in the principles of equality and meritocracy. I want to be judged based on my abilities and achievements, not my gender." Mr. Wilson nodded, seemingly understanding her perspective but not fully convinced. "Rebecca, I'll discuss this matter with the higher-ups and see if we can come to a resolution. In the meantime, please continue with your other responsibilities." Rebecca left Mr. Wilson's office, feeling conflicted. She knew that the battle for equality was not an easy one. But she was determined to stand up for her principles. She decided to seek advice from her mentor, Sarah, who had faced similar challenges in her career. Sarah, an experienced executive in her 40s, had always been a source of guidance and inspiration for Rebecca. They had met early in Rebecca's career, and Sarah had been instrumental in helping her navigate the complexities of the corporate world. Rebecca scheduled a lunch meeting with Sarah and shared her recent experience with Mr. Thomas and Mr. Wilson. Sarah listened intently. Her eyes filled with empathy. "Rebecca, I understand your frustration, and I commend your commitment to equality," Sarah began. "But you have to remember that challenging deep-rooted biases and stereotypes is a gradual process. It won't happen overnight, and it often requires perseverance." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "I know, Sarah, but it's disheartening to see these biases still at play in the workplace, even after all the progress we've made." Sarah smiled warmly and said, "Change takes time, but it's important to continue pushing for it. In the meantime, focus on what you can control, your own growth and development. Let your skills and achievements speak for themselves." Over the next few weeks, Rebecca threw herself into her work, determined to excel in every aspect of her job. She continued to manage her other accounts with dedication and enthusiasm, earning the respect of her colleagues and team members. Meanwhile, the situation with Mr. Thomas remained unresolved. He continued to work directly with a senior executive from the agency. And Rebecca watched from the sidelines, knowing she could have handled the account just as effectively. One evening, as Rebecca was wrapping up her work at the office, she received an unexpected call from Mr. Wilson. He sounded both serious and apologetic as he said, "Rebecca, I've been thinking about your situation, and I believe you deserve a chance to prove yourself to Mr. Thomas. Would you be willing to meet with him again and present your ideas one more time?" Rebecca's heart raced with hope and determination. She replied, "Yes, Mr. Wilson. I'm more than willing to meet with Mr. Thomas and demonstrate my abilities." Mr. Wilson appreciated her willingness to give it another try. "I'll arrange the meeting for next week. Prepare thoroughly, and remember, this is your chance to make a lasting impression." Rebecca spent the next week preparing tirelessly for her upcoming meeting with Mr. Thomas. She revised the presentation, conducted market research, and consulted with her team to ensure they had the most innovative and compelling ideas. The day of the meeting arrived, and Rebecca was determined to show Mr. Thomas her capabilities and resilience. She entered the conference room with a sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the meeting began, Rebecca presented her ideas with confidence and precision. She addressed Mr. Thomas's questions and concerns with a deep understanding of his industry. This time, she noticed a subtle change in his demeanor. He seemed more engaged and less dismissive. As she concluded her presentation, Mr. Thomas leaned forward and said, "Rebecca, I must admit that your ideas are impressive, and you've clearly done your homework. I appreciate your dedication." Rebecca felt a sense of relief and accomplishment. She replied, "Thank you, Mr. Thomas. I'm committed to delivering the best results for your campaign, and I hope we can work together effectively." Mr. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "Let's give it a try. I'm willing to work with you on this campaign, and if all goes well, we can consider a long-term partnership." Rebecca left the meeting with a renewed sense of confidence and a belief that her dedication to equality and merit had prevailed. She had shown that she could be a capable leader in her field, irrespective of her gender. As the weeks passed, Rebecca's partnership with Mr. Thomas flourished. The advertising campaign was a resounding success, and he soon entrusted her with more projects. Slowly but surely, Rebecca began to break down the barriers of gender bias, not just for herself but for others who might follow in her footsteps. The experience had taught her that the path to equality in the workplace was paved with challenges, but it was a path worth walking. She continued to be a strong advocate for gender equality, inspiring those around her to believe that they could excel based on their abilities and not be held back by stereotypes or biases. Rebecca's journey was a testament to the power of determination and resilience, a reminder that one person's commitment to change could make a significant difference in the world.